you want to be great at designing puzzles, the authors of probably the seminal work in puzzle design, the authors of this book called Puzzlecraft, suggest that really what you're doing is not becoming this incredible mathematician or becoming world class at logic games and so forth, although those skills can be helpful. What you're actually doing is becoming a master at the design of experiences and master of designing and managing frustration levels. And I find that really intriguing because that's part of what makes a game intriguing and what makes a puzzle intriguing is that it requires effort, significant effort. It requires persisting through failed attempts and failure, and it can take extended periods of time. Sometimes that's bound within a matter of minutes or hours or weeks or months or years or even decades, and they can be designed at different levels of frustration that will engage some people or more people or certain target audiences. But this idea of managing frustration is one that I find to be one of the most intriguing, and I agree with them, one of the most important skills of a great puzzle designer. So let's talk about how this happens. What the authors suggest in this book is that one of the ways that puzzle designers manage this kind of frustration is that there is a kind of order, there's a kind of communication that happens within a great puzzle, an escape room, a puzzle design, a treasure hunt, whatever it might be, so that you have this frustration, but there are checkpoints along the way where you have evidence that you've made progress. And this is actually true in the research on learning. One of the most fundamental truths about effective learning is it is almost impossible to learn something new without feedback. We require feedback loops. We need to know if I'm going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Somehow I have to either create a feedback system for myself, have a feedback system that was provided by someone else, but somehow I have to be able to know, am I making progress? Otherwise, people are going to quit and they're going to disengage over time. At least the vast, vast majority of people, almost everyone, and in some cases, absolutely everyone. So when you're designing a puzzle or a game, you're thinking about this and you're going to figure out, how do I create some checkpoints so that things, maybe before I get to the final solve or solution, I have evidence that I'm going in the right direction. I've made it to some stage, and then I have to maybe go to stage 2 or stage 3. That's why in treasure hunt design, for example, they often do clue chain treasure hunt designs so that you find one item and then that leads to another item and it leads to another. And even the fact that you get some confidence that you've solved one thing, so you have confidence that maybe you can take on the new one. Or in escape room design, that's why escape rooms are usually designed in terms of zones, and there are different puzzles in different zones of the room, and one leads to the next, it leads to the next. These are checkpoints along the way. It's not like you have to solve all 10 clues at the exact same time without them being connected or related to anything else. There is a kind of communication. The puzzle designer in a well-designed puzzle is talking to you in a figurative way through the puzzle design. And if you have eyes to see, if you have ears to hear, that can kind of guide you along the way. We see this in really well-designed puzzles as well. Even if you've ever used kind of those like wooden puzzles where you have a bunch of different pieces and you have to try to put them together in the form of a cube or a sphere or something like that. If you pay a lot of attention to it, once you solve it or once you've seen it solved and you look, you'll actually notice that there are stages in the way that it was designed. That it wasn't just get all of the pieces and make them fit together, but it's maybe 4 categories and 4 different major types of pieces. And if you understand sort of the system, they serve almost like checkpoints for you. Now, you don't know the order. Maybe you discover that there are 4 main types of pieces, but you don't know which pieces have to go in which order, and that's part of the solve. Or even in a jigsaw puzzle or something like that, they may be completely random pieces that fit together, and there's no real rhyme or rhythm in terms of how different pieces are structured throughout the game. But there are some. For example, there are edge pieces. And so you can kind of build the edges around. And there are images on those jigsaw puzzles, and so that you're using the clues of the images. And there are kind of checkpoints where you get a part of the image that starts to become visible to you as you solve pieces. Notice in every single one of these that this is about a puzzle maker who is managing frustration levels and giving you an experience of being on a journey so that you can see that you're making some kind of progress along the way. The reality is, though, that not all puzzles are designed by master puzzle makers, and they may not have thought as clearly about this. They may have misunderstood their target audience. They may have a different kind of agenda in mind. And so you can't always assume that the puzzle maker is a master designer as if they are, the equivalent of a world-class artist. And when an artist paints something, every single thing is intentional. Not all puzzles are designed that way. In fact, most puzzles have some weaknesses in them. I would say that if you compare puzzle design to a painting, they're both pieces of art. They're both expressions, creative expressions, and so forth. And yet sometimes puzzle designers, they're dealing with an audience because they're engaging the people to be part of the art in a direct way and to actually solve it, to kind of finish the art in a way for them. And that is in some ways perhaps even more complex than other kinds of art. And you can't really predict how everyone's going to respond. Nonetheless, you are, as a puzzle designer, designing things with the solvers in mind, with considering levels of frustration, considering ways that you can give them a brief little vista or glimpse of hope or something like that. And that can also even include the planned inclusion of hints or Easter eggs or other things like that along the way, things that give you a sign that you're not just completely wasting your time, but that you are actually making progress, that your effort is worth what you're putting into it and you're pouring into it, that there have to be some kind of reward system in a way where you're discovering some truth, there's some kind of meaning, there's a playfulness, there's a fun, there's a reward of fun, reward of community that you create along the way. And that too is part of the puzzle maker's mastery of frustration in their design. So if you are a puzzle maker, I'd love to hear some of your feedback. And if you are one who just loves to solve puzzles and in your life, I'd love to hear your feedback on this idea of the puzzle designer as one who is really designing and managing frustration levels.